by wishing us peace in our hearts. Thank you so much for coming, and I find it very awkward that we're here in such cozy and friendly group, yet there's so much formality in the entire presentation that one might think there are 2,000 people here. But I appreciate I appreciate the welcoming. And before we actually get to today's topic, I want to talk about the importance of science. We are here in a Spiritist center, and most of Spiritists are ex-Catholics. And the result of that, there is this unconscious tendency to transform the Spiritist center into a church. Now, the word church, if you look at it in the dictionary, it does not represent solely the building, with the bells. The word church is any gathering of people who are there to learn something elevated. So in that sense, any group becomes a church. But the problem in transforming the Spiritist Center into a church is that we could start again with rituals. And rituals can be detrimental to our progress, to our evolution. And why is that? Well, that's because the primary purpose of someone being a Christian is to transform themselves for the better. The primary purpose of someone becoming a Buddhist is to transform themselves for the better. The primary purpose for someone to be a Muslim is to transform themselves for the better. The primary purpose of why we're here is to transform ourselves for the better. And to do that, it's a lot of hard work. Because we have to identify in us the imperfections that stop us from making this growth within us. So, as a consequence, we create rituals. And what are rituals? Rituals are repetitive movements that we make that can take us away from the true purpose of why we're here or any temple. If we're not careful, we start to repeat the same rituals again, and the main purpose of why we're here, which is to transform ourselves, becomes secondary, tertiary, to a point that we completely forget that the main reason why we find ourselves in this institution is to transform ourselves for the better. That's the main thing. So because we are ex-Catholics, there is a tendency, not always, but there is this inclination to conduct our lectures in a very religious way. And what I mean by religious way is that we repeat the rituals we're so accustomed to. And the consequence of that, we might forget the other aspects of Spiritism. Spiritism, it's not a religion in the traditional sense of the word. Because when you think of the word religion, the things that come up to your mind is, hierarchy of power, people singing, money collection, incense. These are the things that we think when we hear the word religion. In that sense, Spiritism is not a religion. But if you try to define the word by its primitive sense, here we have these syllables that speak so much to us the true definition of religion. For example, the beginning of the word, re, starts with this prefix that means to repeat something, to redo something. For example, recommence, reestablish, restart is to do something again. So re in religion is to do something over again. Then we have the suffix of the word, ion. And whenever you see the suffix ion in a word, it means an action is taking place. Conversation, manipulation, aggravation. An action is taking place. So now we have the prefix and the suffix. And then we have the root of the word, which is lig, L-I-G. And what that root stands for is to connect something. Lig, like the ligaments on your knee. What are they doing? They're connecting different parts of your knee together so you can walk. So lig stands for connection. So what does the word religion stand for? The action of reconnection. The action of reconnection. And the question is, what is being reconnected with what? Well, the creature with the creator. Us, the creation, with the creator. And the question is, why is it so important to be reconnected? Well, it's in order for us to know what is it that we have to do with our lives. This is a creation or a creator? Let me hear it. It's a question. Is this a creation or a creator? It's a creation. The creator of this creation designed this object with a purpose. What is the purpose of this object? To write. And when I use this object for the purpose which was created, it works perfectly. Now, let me try to use this object for a purpose which was not intended for, as a hammer. What would happen with this object? I will break it. Let me try to use as a screwdriver and unscrew the screw. Is it going to work? Absolutely not. Let me use it as a chisel. So the only reason our lives don't work is because we keep using it for the purposes which was never intended for. But when we are connected, we know the purpose of our existence, and everything else makes sense. So through that lens, Spiritism is a religion because it helps us to reconnect with the Creator. Get it? Very good. But Spiritism, it does not have only one aspect to it. It has another aspect, and the aspect is of a philosophy. And what is a philosophy? What does the word philosophy stand for? Philo stands for love. Zaphi stands for study. So philosophy is the love for knowledge. And we study just about everything here at the Spiritist Center. It's a university of the soul. And it is also a philosophy because it answers the main questions we all have in life. Who are we? Where we came from? And most importantly, where are we going? If we don't know the answer to those questions, we are victims of what society tells us what life is all about. And the third aspect of Spiritism, which is sometimes seldomly spoken about, is the scientific aspect. And what is science concerned with? Science is concerned with facts, not so much beliefs. And the scientific aspect of Spiritism sheds light where the materialistic scientific aspect cannot yet understand. And in order to study these subjects through the scientific lenses, we have the help of a doctor who disincarnated, in other words, left the flesh, and he writes from the spiritual world. And the name of this doctor is Andre Luiz. And the book we will discuss today, it's this book, especially chapter 13. And the reason for it, it's because today's topic will be embryology in the light of Spiritism. Now, how we develop and the forces that shape our body and our lives. That's what we're going to talk about. Our time is very limited, therefore this is nothing but an introduction to the subject. And before I go on with the topic itself, let me make another observation. Some people, they had terrible science teachers in school. And because these teachers were so terrible, the students associated the subject they were studying with the teacher himself. So sometimes you hear people saying, I hate physics. And why is that? Well, it could be, not always, but it could be they had a terrible physics teacher. And that teacher became associated with physics itself. I hate biology. Why? Well, that's because they probably, not always, but they probably had a terrible biology teacher who did not have the art of teaching, because teaching is an art. In my years of my bachelor years in biology, I ran through some science teacher, and I remember my zoology teacher. I mean, this man was eminent. He was like the epitome in his field. But when it came to teaching, he didn't know how to convey the message. He just put us to sleep. And some students, they just hated the subject because of the teacher himself. Now, the video will be on YouTube. They might research, find him, and he might sue me for the information I was giving to you. So, before you even reject the topic itself, give yourself the chance of understanding what we're going to talk about. Because regardless how you feel about this subject, everybody went through this process. If you're a king or an unknown individual, if you're famous or very infamous, we all went through this process. So before I discuss the subject in the light of Spiritism, let me discuss first this subject in the light of our materialistic science. Do we have an agreement? And since we are in such a modern age, for this, I seldomly use videos in our talks, but today it's unavoidable that we use it. So, we're all grown-ups in here, and this is the first picture of an ejaculation. And I'm going to tell you some numbers so you can just marvel at the wonder of all. When a man ejaculates, he releases 40 million to 1.2 billion sperms. Should I repeat that number again? No. 40 million to 1.2 billion sperms. I have to make another observation. The observation is, when it comes to this topic of sex, there is this gigantic taboo. Immediately you could feel the vibration. People change their facial expression. My friends, this is the most natural process on the planet. It's something very sacred. If it wasn't for sex, there would be no continuation of species. When we face this subject with this taboo, this is an inheritance of our Catholic period. As Catholics, we were taught that sex is dirty, right? And anything that has to do with sex is just blameful, shameful. You should not talk about it. But in the lenses of our sciences, it is the most beautiful thing because it has to do with exchange of information. Everything in nature is sex. A tree roots it's having sex with the earth. It's exchanging information about the tree, and the dirt is exchanging information with the tree. The fruit is a result of this exchange of information. Everything's an exchange. Look at this way. The man is exchanging his information with the woman. That is less taboo. Exchange of information. So I would not get to the point of the before part. You know what happened before, right? They went to dinner, came home. 40 to 1.2 billion sperms in one single ejaculation. And as the sperm enters the vaginal canal, they travel by moving a little tail called cilia. And they're moving very fast. And what is the objective of each of these sperms? To get to one egg. One egg. 40 million to 1.2 billion sperms are going for just one egg. It's a gigantic race here and competition amongst these sperms. So as they start to travel, a woman's body every month prepares to be pregnant. Every month. And one way is that the woman body prepares itself to be pregnant is by opening the door to the uterus. And this is the door right here. And the sperms are entering this door. They're traveling at this point through the fallopian tube. What are the fallopian tubes? Ovaries are responsible for producing woman's egg. And every month, a woman's release one egg. And that egg travels down the fallopian tube while the sperm is going up the fallopian tube to meet with the egg. And all the sperms are competing with one another. There are two fallopian tubes, two ovaries. So now, which fallopian tube should I go through? I don't know if the sperms are thinking that way, but we will talk about what's going on in just a few minutes. So all these millions of sperms, they decided to go to the right fallopian tube, and they're traveling while the egg itself is coming down from the ovary, and they will meet in some place in the fallopian tube. At this point, millions and millions of sperms have already lost the race, and other millions have continued with the race. And they're all taking the male genetic information. And now there are few and few more traveling towards the egg. And the egg is right there. And only one sperm can enter the egg. So all these little guys are going for that one egg. And what do we have? Okay, so let me stop right there. Lights. All of us, we have in our body about 70 trillion cells. And these cells, they go through a process of mitosis. Mitosis is a process by which, when a cell divides, its daughter has an equal set amount of chromosomes as the parent cell. So when you take a shower, for example, and you dry your skin, millions of cells are being shed when you dry your skin. But how come you just don't disappear after bathing yourself so much? Well, that's because there is constant multiplication of cells in your body. As a matter of fact, every 7 years, your body renews itself through the process of decaying and shedding these cells and new ones being built by the process of mitosis. Each of these cells carry your entire genetic information. you have 46 chromosomes. What are chromosomes? Chromosomes are the place where your genetic information is stored inside the nucleus of a cell. And inside the chromosomes, we have genes. Genes are the genetic information that shapes your height, the color of your hair, the color of your eye, the color of your skin. Everything is there. Interesting thing about the genes. Everybody heard about the genes, even if you don't know what genes are. But the interesting thing is, because we are such a complex organism, geneticists, when they started decoding our genome, they thought that we had about 100,000 genes. But when Francis Collins and his team finished decoding our genome, they found out that we only had 24,000 genes. So these genes are located in your chromosomes, and you have 46 chromosomes. Now, where your chromosomes came from? Well, there is a process that happened in our body called meiosis. Meiosis, it's a different process of cell division. Instead of your daughter cell having the same amount of chromosomes, it will have half of it, called haploid. What that means is that the woman's egg does not have 43 chromosomes. It only has 23 chromosomes. A male sperm does not have 46 chromosomes. It has 23 chromosomes. So the sperm's job is to take that genetic information to the egg. The egg is waiting in the fallopian tube with its 23 chromosomes, while the sperm is taking 23 chromosomes. And the combination of that would be 46 chromosomes. This is the reason why you have physical features from your mother and from your father. You are a hybrid of two individuals. You follow me so far? Very good. Let me tell you something very interesting here. Throughout history, we men have been experts in inflicting pain, especially in women. And women have been so resilient in receiving this pain. This is why it was given to the woman the job of birth. Because if it was given to men, the earth would be uninhabited. But, throughout the ages, a man always wanted to keep going on with his line of ancestry. He wanted to pass on his name. And he wouldn't believe that some women have been killed because she wasn't able to give her husband a male child, and only female. Have you ever heard of these cases before? Yes? Now, let me explain something that modern science taught us. These are the 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46. The chromosome that determines the sex of the baby is the 23rd chromosome. When a woman's egg is produced, it always have X. Always. That's what the woman, always an X. What makes a woman through the genetic point of view is the fact that the 23rd chromosome is an X and an X. 2X makes a female. But a man's sperm can either have an X or a Y. So when the boy becomes a boy, when the baby, better said, when the fetus in the third trimester becomes a boy, the genitals appear, it was because of the male's Y. So all throughout history, men have blamed women for not giving him a male, but who was responsible for it? The man. Isn't this something? All the women that have been killed because they couldn't bear a boy. Give him a boy, a male. And look at that. Science tells us that we are the ones responsible for contributing with the chromosome that makes a male possible. Isn't that something? I just found that astounding because I read history and there were so many women who were sacrificed because of this, or either because of this, or they were abandoned per se, just because she couldn't give him. And the whole time he was responsible for it. This is why I told you before, we males have been experts in inflicting pain, and women have been experts in receiving pain. This is why you're always stronger than us. Even when there is an elderly, if it's a male or a male, statistically speaking, the male is more likely to die than the woman. Babies, when they're sick, it's male or female, most likely the male will die. This is statistically speaking. It's not a belief. This is science, scientific information. So women, if you feel better than we do, if you think that you're better than we are, you have all the reasons for it. Continue feeling that way. So now, all these sperms are fighting to get their shot in entering the egg. So multiple sperms are trying to do that, and only one will actually enter the egg. So they're looking here for a soft spot, and what happens when they find that spot, they will now release a chemical that make the outer shell of the egg more soft, and they will release their pressure cargo inside the egg. They will first shed their tail, because now there's no need for that tail. And the nucleus of the sperm will be released to meet with the nucleus of the egg. At that moment that the sperm enters the egg sends a chemical reaction to its outer shell that hardens, and all the other sperms cannot get in. And now the sperm enters the nucleus of the egg, sheds its tail, and releases its pressure cargo. And what it's releasing right now? 23 chromosomes to meet with the nucleus of the egg that also has 23 chromosomes. And we call this moment the moment of conception. So, lights, please. In the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec asked the following question. At what moment reincarnation begins? And I always like to believe that people who had never heard of Spiritism will be listening to these lectures because our good friend Daniel is placing them on YouTube. And for that reason, there will be many people who have absolutely no clue what we're talking about. And this is why I don't mean to patronize anyone, but I have to explain these terms to them. What is reincarnation? Once again, we already know the prefix of the word, re, to do it again. Then we have shun, which is an action. Then after re, we have in. And in is another prefix that means to enter. Put in, come in, place in. And then we have the root of the word, carne, which means flesh. So what is reincarnation? The action of re-entering the flesh. So the question Allan Kardec asked, at what moment does the spirit re-enters the flesh? Well, it begins at conception. But it only comes at birth. Question 300 and 44. So now the two genetic information will meet. And the egg, at this point it's called a zygote. And the zygote will multiply to 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on, until it becomes a blastocele. At the same time, the cells are rapidly dividing. They're going now down the fallopian tube towards the uterus, where it's very rich in nutrients in order to provide to the growing nucleus the material that it needs to continue its development. It will get to a point in which the zygote seems to be absorbed by the uterus. But at this moment, the amniotic sac is being constructed in order to provide nutrients and the placenta as well to form a cushion for the fetus that it's being developed. So at this point, we have here cells that are multiplying itself by the millions every second. And what you see here, it's the beginning of the nervous system and the entire body. These cells will divide into this little tube and will reconnect again, giving the foundation of the central nervous system. And as you can see, the vertebrae are being formed, and the baby is just but weeks old. And the cells, this is not a heart. These are cells that will compose the heart, that starts to beat like a heart. Individual cells beat like a heart, but it's not a shape of a heart just yet. And this is just weeks old. And now you see a little growing patch of cells moving like a heart, and they will keep multiplying and folding tissues on top of one another until it becomes the actual picture of a heart. And now what you see over there is this little fetus. And lights, please. Something amazing happens. These are all embryos that we're seeing. Can you tell us which embryo is the human embryo? Can you tell? No? First one is the human embryo, second rabbit, cow, chicken, pig, turtle, salamander, fish. Do they all look the same to you? Yes, they do. And why? That's because when the embryo is being developed, it tells the story of our evolution. The embryo is going through the phases of which it did in the past, when we were fishes, amphibians, primates, until we got to this point of being a human. The embryo tells the story of our evolution. Isn't that amazing? Even before this, it's been 45 minutes of the lecture already. We just started. Even before this, there is so much to tell how the egg is so soft and transparent. And when you look at the egg of a fish, it's exactly what it is. It's going through the phases of evolution. It gets to a point that the blastocyst becomes almost a flat disc. And that recapitulates the story when we were born in an egg, our amphibian part of our evolution. Amphibians, they lay egg. And inside the egg, you have the yolk, which is the yellow, and that flat disc, which is an embryo, right there inside the egg. It's exactly what it's doing here. And once it gets to this point, we can't tell which is which. It's telling the story of how we evolve, the process of the evolution of our body. I find it magical. Let's continue. This is weeks after conception. And the rate of cell multiplication, it's millions by the second, like we said. The tail is over there, recapitulating our evolution. And slowly but constantly, that tail will disappear. These are the single cells of the heart. Already pumping to create the circulatory system. And why the circulatory system is so vital for a baby to continue to develop? Well, that's because the circulatory system is the part of our organism responsible to transport nutrients throughout our body. Your circulatory system in your body right now serves as the transportation system for you. It takes the food that you need to each cell in your body. Each cell needs to be fed, and for that, it needs a transportation system to be taken over there. So this is why early on the circulatory system is being formed. And then you see the head growing little by little, and all the nerves pathway are being developed at this point. The eyes, and this baby is less than 12 weeks. By the first trimester, the baby is fully formed. The skin is translucent, so we can see some of the organs being formed. The spinal cord is visible. The arms and the legs starts to form very slowly, and then you see the fingers. What amazes embryologists is the fact that, how all is taking place without the woman's consciousness. In no moment of her pregnancy, a woman tells the baby, make a leg, and make a finger, or make a nail. The woman is unaware. Not only the woman is unaware of the process happening in her body, but her body is also reproducing more cells for herself. Another amazing thing is that takes place. Remember, the blood of the mother never mixes with the blood of the baby. Meanwhile, while the baby is growing up, while the embryo is being developed, the baby needs to breathe. But where is the oxygen coming from? Well, when the mother breathes, the oxygen goes to the blood system. And that blood system takes the oxygen to the placenta. And the baby's special blood steals the oxygen from the mother blood in order to continue its own growth. All this is taken without the awareness of the woman. And how does in the world these cells know when to stop multiplying themselves? You see here, it's almost like a paddle, and then this sheds off. So they ask themselves, how this instruction is carried on. That fingers are formed, and these cells here, they stop multiplying. Otherwise, it will be just a gigantic palm instead of single fingers. And the nose is taking shape, the mouth. This baby is about 2 months old. The baby's yet sex cannot be determined by this point. Years are being formed. The ears also, they reflect the evolutionary process because they are located in the same part of the gills of the fishes. It's also telling the evolution process. Now you can see the eyes, the mouth, the nose. Eyelids are not yet formed, but you can see the iris of the eye, the nose. Not to mention that at this point, what you're seeing is something that looks like this. It's smaller than a grain of rice. Now the eyelids just formed, eyes are shut, and baby starts to receive impression from the outside world because his senses are now being developed. Not just the organs that receive the senses, but the sensory system itself. So the baby is very tiny, the woman can barely feel the baby moves around, and now the baby is about 3 months, and it's something like this. About 2 inches. The nervous system, which is the brain, the spinal cord, and all the neurons, is taking charge. This is a neuron being formed, and this is the artists who designed this, showing to us how the neurons are starting to communicate with one another. And these connections here, from the materialistic point of view, this is what makes you the person who you are, the neuron connections. And there could be, per neuron, more than 10,000 connections. So as they say, there are more neuron connections occurring within you than stars in the universe. And the neuron connections here are so vital for the baby to continue to develop, because now it's controlling the development of the baby as well. It's helping the process. So it's sort of a zoom in the brain of the baby. So now the baby resembles a little human being. It seems that the head is disproportional in size. It's showing that the baby can now move itself, stick his little finger in his mouth, interact with the mother, that's saying. This is why they ask the mother to speak with the baby, because the baby can definitely feel the mother. Baby moves around. The heart is fully formed, definitely pumping on the blood. 65 beats per minute. That's how fast the heart is pumping. And imagine that those cells that you saw pumping at first will not cease to pump until you die. Imagine how many pumps. It's a constant machine that is doing this job for us, and we are completely oblivion by it. And it's just showing that the baby is growing bigger and bigger, adding fat. And that fat is in order to survive in the outside world, to regulate its body temperature. And what also will show right now is the fact that a woman's egg are produced at this stage. A baby is born with eggs because the body is designed to multiply itself. So the next clip that you see here is the process of meiosis happening inside the baby's womb. That's what's occurring right now. So in order to prepare the chromosomes again, these are 23 chromosomes being prepared inside a woman egg. You could put the lights, please. Lights on. Isn't it so interesting? It's just fantastic. You know, there are so many unknowns on how the baby develops inside a woman's womb. You know, the experts on this subject, they say, if you had to develop mathematics for this, it's beyond human comprehension. I'm just going to give you one detail. When it is fully grown, when it's about to come out, it's 9 months old. 9 months, not a year, 9 months alone. And it's born with 60,000 miles of capillaries. What are capillaries? Capillaries are blood vessels. They are so tiny in order to deliver food to all different parts of your body. They deliver food and take waste out. They're called capillaries. So a baby is born with 60,000 miles of these blood vessels called capillaries. Now, just telling that number doesn't mean anything. But the Earth has approximately 25,000 miles in its circumference. To be precise, 24,901 miles. That's how big the Earth is. So a baby of 9 months only, his or her capillaries is enough to go around the globe 2.5 times. Isn't that something else? I guess the number is so astounding that nobody understands what I just spoke about. It's just amazing that this complex machine, our body, goes through this process, without no one's awareness. Like life is giving life to life. Now, what is the Spiritist perspective on all this? If someone has a materialistic perspective on life, everything has to do with having luck or no luck, accidents or no accidents. It's a matter of pure chance and nothing else. So, if someone is born blind, if someone is born deaf, if someone is born with Down syndrome, what is Down syndrome? The 21st pair of chromosome has an extra chromosome there. Instead of being just 2, there are 3 of them. And that has all these physiological consequences to the body. From the materialistic point of view, a baby with Down syndrome is just a bad luck baby. Remember the race I showed in the beginning? Some of these sperms are carrying the good genes, and some of them are carrying the bad genes. Some of them will carry diseases, some of them will carry no disease. So what determines which sperm will reach the egg? Well, for the materialistic scientists, it's just a matter of pure luck. That's it. You tell that to a blind individual. You're born blind for the simple fact that you inherited the bad genes. The only reason why you can't walk is because you inherited the bad genes. That's it. Your father, who had 40 to 1.2 billion sperms at your one sperm that was defective is the one that actually reached the egg. Or out of the thousands of eggs that your mother had, she released the bad egg. So this is why you're like this. It's nonsense when you think of the psychological implications. Bad luck, that's it. Just pure bad luck, nothing else. What is which we respect? We respect science. Yet, Spiritism goes beyond where science yet has not achieved in order to comprehend these occurrences of life. So in this book, called Missionaries of Light, André Luiz, who was a doctor while on earth, while reincarnated, he comes to Chico Xavier in order to give a medical, a scientific description of what happens in the process of reincarnation. And what he says is that when we are in the spiritual world, we finally understand the purpose of our lives. What is the purpose of our lives? To transform ourselves for the better. We are all under the law of evolution. That's the reason why we exist, to evolve intellectually and morally. Not only become smart individuals, but people of love. So the individual Christ is someone who achieved this state of perfection. The miracles that he was able to carry through, they weren't miracles. It was his supreme knowledge of the machine, our biological machine, our bodies, that he was able to operate and change in its molecular level. And he repeated these healings many times. It was a miracle. It was knowledge of the human body. And he did it because of love, of showing us the path. So is a being of supreme intelligence while being supremely good. And that is our purpose, to evolve. So when we are in the spiritual world, we actually read our story. We actually study, we make analysis of how we have lived our previous physical existences. For those of you watching us in YouTube, yes, we have one life. One is spiritual life. But our physical existences are many. You are the same individual returning to physical body as many times as needed in order for you to continue your progress of growth. So when we are in the spiritual world, we are making analysis of what we have done. And then we conclude that we have made lots of friends. We have done excellent things, but we also conclude that we have done terrible things. We learn in the spiritual world that when we allowed ourselves to be carried by altruism, doing good to others, we did good to ourselves. But we also learned that when we carried ourselves through the forces of selfishness, we did bad things to other people that impacted our lives. So we learned that altruism helps us to evolve and selfishness helps us to stay behind. And there are certain individuals that live their selfishness to the extreme, doing horrific things to other people. So horrific that it creates in them a state of guilt so intense that they are unable to forgive themselves. And because they are unable to forgive themselves, they ask, they plead for it, to come back to a physical existence in which they will atone for the mistakes they have done towards other people so they could free themselves from the guilt they feel. Guilt is a very destructive force. When someone feels guilty, it doesn't matter if they have a priest, a pastor, if they get 1,000 passes. If we have our own consciousness telling us, you did it, you're responsible for it, there is no psychotropic medication, there is no alcohol, there is no drugs that can release us from that guilt. There is not even suicide. Some people commit suicide to run away from remorse, from feeling so guilt. So when they feel this way on the spiritual world, they beg to atone for their mistakes. And this is where they will themselves select a body, a biological machine that will help them atone for their mistakes. So they actually sit down with someone that will plan their reincarnation for them. There are teams of scientists in the spiritual world who are experts in the process of choosing the chromosomes, the genes that are right for the individual who wants to attune for this or that reason. So they actually show the individual a map of their chromosomes that would be most needed for them to atone for their mistakes. So we are the ones who select the body that we have in the spiritual world with the help of experts. So when the sperm is traveling through the fallopian tube, that sperm is magnetized, meaning that sperm receives fluids to speed up its process, to actually win the race. The experts in reincarnation know which sperm is carrying the genetic information that will construct the body that most suitable for the spiritual growth. So they will throw energy at that sperm. The sperm will actually gain speed to reach the egg. And this is where we come into conclusion through this literature that when someone is born with physical deficiency, this was no bad luck. This is an opportunity for growth. Because while we suffer in the body, the soul is getting clean of its imperfections. And all of us, we carry the physical determinants that it's better to suit our spiritual needs, our evolutionary growth. In that sense, when we are in the spiritual world and we found out that because of beauty, we have committed many crimes. For example, a handsome man, because of his physical attractability, he had caused women to divorce their husbands. In the spiritual world, women who were extremely beautiful, they found out it was because of my beauty that I caused my own pain. Because of my beauty, I had men betraying their own wives, abandoning their kids, and this is why I'm suffering so much right now. So I plead to God, I want an ugly body. These things, we actually beg for them, truly, in the spiritual world. When we don't have the consciousness to make these choices for us, they will. Just like we make the choices for our children, not based on hate, but based on love. We give them the education that they most need, not necessarily what they want. Children want all sorts of things that are unhealthy for them. But we as parents who care so much for them, we choose what is best for them in order for them to have a healthy growth. And the highly evolved spirits who are in charge of our destiny, the individual that you call your guardian angel, is the one that most of the time make these decisions for you, because he or she knows what is best for you. So everything is determined before we are born. The major things in our lives are determined before we're born by the choices we make, and they are based on the things that we have done in our physical existences. So, there are many implications to this. For one, if you don't like the mother that you had, if you don't like the father that you had, these are not the people that you necessarily want, but they are definitely the people that you needed for your spiritual growth. And even though if they were terrible to you, they allowed you to come back. They allowed you to reincarnate. Sometimes I hear individuals saying that their mother owed them this kind of money, owed them this and owed them that. And I think to myself, imagine if we had to pay for a reincarnation. Imagine if we had to put in our credit card and buy a new body for us. Imagine how much that will cost. I mean, there is no price for it. There is no way a mother can owe a son or a daughter anything because she gave them a body, a machine, a biological machine. She definitely did not give him or her a spirit. We, as spirits, came from the supreme intelligence of the universe, the Creator. But our bodies, they came through other people. And a Spiritist lecture must always have a consoling factor. If I stop at this minute here, it seems more of a scientific or science, or some of the critics will say a pseudoscience, than anything else. And it is true. And this is why a Spiritist lecture, we always must provide the consoling factor in the lecture, because that's the main reason why we're here, to improve ourselves, to better ourselves. And although scientific information could be very interesting, sometimes they don't provide consoling factors in our lives. So here is the consoling factor. You have the life that you need. Everything that we label as difficulties in our lives are nothing but paths for us to develop the potential that we carry within ourselves. Without these struggles, without these hardships and difficulties, we remain children in the school of life. There is no growth without challenges. There is no spiritual evolution without trials. The problem is that we label these opportunities, as disgrace, catastrophes, but they are nothing but opportunities for growth. Life is not against you. God is not against you. It's just a matter of us waking up to the real purpose of our existence, to better ourselves consciously, morally, scientifically, to better ourselves intellectually by becoming smarter people, by helping ourselves becoming more morally developed. Those are our goals. And if we choose the path of love, we will achieve these goals. What is the path of love? By listening very carefully what other people have to say to us. This book, this literature, this is not entertainment. These individuals are telling us, look what I did. Don't do the same. They are advising us what is the best path of our lives. If we read just one question of the Spirit's book, the question 913, that the root of all of our pain and suffering is called selfishness. The understanding of that question alone can completely put us in a new trajectory in life, so we can achieve happiness. If we don't evolve through the process of love, which is listening, educating ourselves, being humble and listen to other people, if we deny, if we refuse the process of love to learn, we will definitely encounter pain. Because the purpose of pain is to teach us what we refuse to learn from love. Pain will teach us what we refuse to learn from love. It's repeating what love said. But now it's hard to listen because it's painful. I'll give you one example of this. I worked in the jail system for 12 years, and I saw many examples of this. People who were out there, and they had mother and father and a cousin and a friend, a grandmother telling them, don't do this. Look what you're doing with your life. This was God, through these people, speaking words of love, telling them, stop this behavior. And they didn't. So they went to jail. Now they learned. In that cubicle, they realized, if I had listened to these people who care about me, I wouldn't be here right now. They arrived at this conclusion because of this painful experience. Was that needed? No. It was out of their stubbornness that they got themselves into that situation. So now I changed my professional life, and I'm doing something more light. Now I'm working in hospice. Yeah. What is hospice? Hospice is when someone has been diagnosed with a terminal illness and there's nothing else they can be done for the individual. So they're sent home to die or to a nursing home. So I've been learning so many good lessons from the people who are dying. And about 3 months ago, I met with this man. And he said when he was in his 30s, he and his wife and 3 children were living a regular life. And in his mind, what was a regular life? Both of them were working, coming home, and watching TV. That was it. And he said, my life was very boring. I always wanted to be a musician. So one day I approached my wife and said, what? That's it. I'm tired of this. I want to live my life. And she says, what do you mean by this? I want to be a musician. I want to sing. I want to play and be with my friends. She says, you can do all that. Go ahead and buy yourself a guitar. Call your friends and play here. Says, no. I need to go somewhere else. And, she tried as much as she could to save her husband from this path. One can say that this was God using the wife through words of wisdom and words of love. Don't choose that path. But he didn't listen. He allowed his stubbornness, his pride. What is pride? Pride is when we think we know everything. And because we think we know everything, we don't learn anything else. So we don't listen. So he took a different path in life, abandoned his wife, his children, and he lived the life he wanted. Played the guitar every night with his friends. And then, he started drinking a certain kind of beer. From their beer, he went to more hard liquors. From the hard liquors to a certain kinds of drugs. And the body cannot take that much of physical abuse. It's not a sin. It's a biological law. The machine that we just shown here to you was not made to take these chemicals. When we do it, we're just banging the machine. We're making it sick. So when he became 55 years old, after a couple of months, he started to feel some pain. He went to the doctor, and he was diagnosed with prostatic cancer. Cancer on his prostate. Now, without his guitar, without wife, without kids because he abandoned them, without a job, and without so-called friends, he was by himself in a hospital. And it got to a point that the hospital says, we know there's nothing else we can do for you. That's it. And what do you mean? Well, that's it. All we can do now is kick you out of the hospital because we need the bed for those who can receive treatment. You can't. And he was kicked out of the hospital. To go where? If there was no one. But here came the saint. The saint. I call this woman a saint because she actually found another job and took him in. So one of the problems that he had, one of the physical problems as a consequence of all these bombardment of chemicals he did to his body, he lost some of his colon. So he had to wear a colonoscopy bag. So one day I entered in his home, and it was very smelly. The wife, the abandoned wife, was cleaning him and the colonoscopy bag. And I saw her eye, and there was just pure compassion in her eye. And this man, he was just skin and bones. So after she cleaned him with the cloth, she went to the bathroom to dump the colonoscopy bag. And he said to me, "This cancer does not even come near the pain that my shame of abandoning my wife does to me right now. Nothing is destroying me more than the guilt of abandoning this lovely wife. Why in the world I did this? I tell you, I'm happy with this cancer because going through this painful process, it has awakened my eye. I know it's too late because there's nothing else I can do. But I tell her I am sorry every day and how much I love her." The point I'm trying to emphasize is that he learned through pain what he could have learned through love. So if you're watching us on YouTube, and if you think that we're just crazy out of our minds after the Spiritist explanation of embryology, just take this as an advice. Don't wait for pain to teach you. Learn through love. People who care about us, most likely they will say what we don't like to hear, yet is the best thing for us. People who don't care about us, they say all sorts of things that could be the worst thing for us. So when we read, when we learn, when we delve into this knowledge, we create in ourselves discernment. What is discernment? Our ability to choose right from wrong. So I strongly suggest continue coming here every Saturday. But just don't come here and sit and as if you're watching a movie. Truly absorb the lesson. And while we reserve a moment for a prayer, and what is the purpose of a prayer amongst all these other purposes is for us to gather strength to put into practice our own objectives. So while you're here, you pray and you ask God, the supreme intelligence of the universe, your guardian angel, to give you the courage that you must have to better yourself. And by becoming a better version of yourself, slowly but constantly, you will feel what we all crave for, peace in our hearts. This is why the poet Castro Alves synthesized in a poem entitled "March On," the objective of our lives. It's very subjective and suggestive. It tells us to march on. In other words, forget your past. Move ahead. We learn about reincarnation so we can understand we're not victims of anything. We are responsible for everything. But we are not supposed to be concentrated in our past. We are supposed to have our eyes in the future, constantly moving forward to march on. Life is full of mysteries, encompassed of laws of beauty, which compels us to evolve. From God we emanate, multiple forms we reincarnate, longing for perfection and love. In humanity we seek the truth from many myths, yearning for peace and evolution. We cause in our path multiple lives and deaths, victims of our own disillusion. From the eternal struggle, building ourselves from the rubble, we learn ways to overcome. Despite the pain and misery, nevertheless, we grow ceaselessly from darkness to dawn. From the raindrop, a plant reached the top, triumphant at last. The root appears to be gloom, but manure converts to perfume, transmutation at its best. The plant will be crowned with flowers all around, birds' opera on their arrival. But flowers too shall pass, their martyrdom is a blast for the ground's revival. From nature we are taught, work hard, that's the law, all life is in movement. Sculpting through sacrifices, we'll carve blocks of vices. Inside a stone lies a monument. Lessons from suffering and pain, change will always remain, even narrows, tyrants without seas. Under the law of reincarnation, through many trials and expiations, they too will be messengers of peace. Let no one be idle. Today's angel was as today's Adam. Perfection is everyone's destiny. Life's purpose, splendid. God's love, transcendent. Our school, universe's eternity. On earth, from time to time, sublime beacons of light dissipate the shadows away. Their presence are felt. Forever in us they dwell, transforming night into day. Never in history a sacrifice, such as the one portrayed by Christ, transpired for the sake of truth. From the cross, the message is heard. Forgive all, always serve. Your pain I will soothe. It's Socrates in the hemlock. It's Caesar's war being fought, inflaming oppression and cruelty. It's Selena, his art, the imperialism of Bonaparte, distributing cruelty. It's Dr. King's I Have a Dream. Lincoln's speeches never seen, the incarnation of renovators. It's the embodiment of humility from the charitable Francis of Assisi, the gospel resuscitator. Blessed be the teachers who illuminate the seekers, inspiring virtues and light. Bliss is yours to conquer, although perfection is yonder, your progress is right. In the entire universe, divine heavenly verses decree, march on. A celestial love awaits. Have hope, have faith towards the infinite to come. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking. And to you all, my friends, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Julio. Then you will give me the word, you sir. Or the power of the microphone. Thank you again, Julio, for this beautiful talk, this reminder of God in our lives, God in the universe, and much that we take for granted, right? Before we go on into questions, this is a moment that you can get up, stretch. If you would like to use the restroom, please do so. I know many of us may have comments, questions that you'd like to make, so it's time to get up. If you want to get up, that's okay. Stretch. A moment of stretch, it's okay. Julio is taking a little sip of water, so it's okay. We have time. Midnight is not here yet. We would like then to take 5 or less than 10 minutes. It's about an hour and a half into this. Seriously, now it's everybody. We all have our commitments, things that we like to do. Some of us would like to stay here, sleep here. It's okay, but others, cannot. So we have to go on. We would like to open for questions, for comments, clarifications, if you have any, to ask Julio. Just raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and take the microphone so we can speak into the microphone, and others can hear as well, who are following us on the web. So I'll pass the word to Alba first.
Julio, thank you so much. Can you be our science teacher, please? We didn't sleep at all. My question is related with intelligence. Because for science, intelligence, it is in the brain of the person. And I have read or see, I don't know if this is scientific or not, that it is the mother who gives the intelligence, like the father gives the sex, to the baby, the gender. So this is a scientific fact, and where is intelligence located?
The information is not correct. From the scientific point of view, both parents contribute to intelligence. The sex chromosome, which is the pair 23rd, it's contributed by the male with an X or with an Y. If the baby becomes a male or a female, it's because of the father. He is the decisive donator here on the X, because the woman always has one X. So if the man donates another X, the baby will be a female. If the man donates an Y, the baby will be a male. By the materialistic point of view, this is solely based on luck. The sperm that carries the Y chromosome got there first, then the sperm that was supposed to take the X. From the Spirit's point of view, in the Spirit's book, question 200, when a person is ready to reincarnate, do they choose to be a male or female? Well, for the Spirit, what it counts is the spiritual needs that they have, the evolutionary needs that they have, that will shape the Spirit's decision to be a male or a female. But the Spirit is its own inheritor of its own intelligence. We call intelligence, it's the sum of our own knowledge as a spirit. The brain does not produce intelligence. The brain is the instrument of intelligence. Instrument. What is an instrument? If you put a guitar on the floor, the guitar does not produce any sound. The guitar is nothing but an instrument. Here comes an artist, a guitar player, and he could take beautiful sounds from that instrument. So a spirit with a lot of knowledge needs a good instrument, a good brain, in order to express its intelligence. And sometimes, and one can say that most of the times, people's intelligence are not placed in the service of love, but in the service of selfishness. So instead of using their intelligence to bring about their happiness, they use their intelligence to bring about their misery. As a result, they create negative consequences for themselves. So in a future reincarnation, because they misused their intelligence, they will now develop a defective brain in order to limit the expression of their intelligence. And by limiting the expression of their intelligence, it will be for them an opportunity to develop other areas of their life that was left in default. It was never developed or seldomly developed. When you read the Spirit's book, we learn in question 780 that we all developed intelligence faster than morality. What is morality? The rule of good conduct. So we develop intelligence first. But intelligence gives us the ability to distinguish right from wrong. So it's natural that we develop intelligence first. But then when we abuse intelligence to the extreme, that we're inflicting pain on others, then we come with a limited instrument that will not allow me to express my intelligence, so inhibits me from making new mistakes. But it's not because I lost my intelligence, because the intelligence belongs to the spirit and not to the instrument. Just like the songs belongs to the artist and not to the guitar itself.
Thank you, Julio. Paula?
This is on? Thanks. Thank you again. It's always good to have you here. How does Spiritism understand spontaneous abortion? I'm assuming that it's a necessary experience for the developing fetus and the parents. And then another question that's close to it, when a handicapped child is born, it seems to me the parents are more than just physical givers, that their spiritual experiences are tied to this child's challenges.
This topic is very sensitive. The first question you posed, it's a seminar on its own because we are talking about abortion. And before we even begin, we are not placing blame on anyone because usually society is very cruel. It makes the woman solely responsible for this. But she did not get pregnant from a tree. There was a male involved in the process. Where is this individual? André Luiz, he explains that when someone makes any negative act, everybody involved in that negative act assumes a responsibility before their own consciousness and before the cosmic consciousness, God. So if someone has a spontaneous abortion, it could be that this is someone that in a previous existence were part of an abortion process. They were part of experiments in which they helped women abort their baby. And now that they want to reincarnate, they have such a difficult time reincarnate to atone for the mistakes they have done, and at the same time for them to value life itself. It could be also someone who committed suicide. Once again, if you commit suicide, there are many reasons for it, but the main objective is to escape from pain. No one who's happy and in peace with themselves commits suicide. They're trying to run away from pain. And what all suicides have in common is the fact that their pain is more intensified on the other side of life. Because now they realize not only they didn't escape from the pain they were running away from, but they multiplied the cause of their pain. So when they find themselves an opportunity to reincarnate, and they can't, and they try many times, it's for their spirit, for their own psychological acquisition, a knowledge to value life. Because we find ourselves in a stage that in order to value something, we must lose it. When we have things are at disposal the entire time, usually we don't value. I mean, do we value right now that we're all healthy here? No. Have we been thankful? Are we thankful that we are healthy? In what way are we thankful? Because usually we wait to get sick to find out how good it is to be healthy, right? We wait to lose something in order to value that it was there to begin with. So when someone tries to reincarnate and they can multiple times, it could be that some of these reasons, suicide and the fact that they participated in a process of helping people abort, and they're atoning for their mistakes. And obviously the parents are involved in that scenario. There's another reason. In the Spirit's book, in part 2, there is the 7th chapter of part 2. In the 7th chapter, it's about the returning to physical life. And in returning to physical life, we understand that someone can actually be scared of the new trials they've chosen for themselves. As a result, they will run away from the opportunity of reincarnating, and that will be a spontaneous abortion occurring. So that could be the reason.
Yes, go.
Thank you so much. I was thinking, when you say we chose the life that we should have. I'm always amazed how people react differently from the same tragedy, for instance, of losing a leg, being amputated, and others that just survive from a suicide attempt and suddenly, what is the correlation of these different people, their reaction to their spiritist, the plane while they were planning the reincarnation? How the same thing makes people react differently? What kind of difference are they in terms of a spiritual level, or they are really in a different mission? I don't know. What is that?
Let me see if I understood your question. Why is it that people react differently towards the same tragedy? Yeah. Well, the answer has to do with people's spiritual maturity. If I face life from the materialistic point of view, then any tragedy, it's almost unsurmountable to me. What is facing life from the materialistic point of view? This is the materialistic point of view. There is no supreme creator. We are the result of random choices, random chances by the evolutionary process. And we are just a bunch of molecules and chemical reactions. And there is no meaning to life. We are the ones who give meaning to life, but there is no real meaning to life. There is no grander scheme of meaning to life. And then when you die, the cells that composed you will come back to dirt, to earth. That's the materialistic point of view. So if society tells us that having money equals happiness, and I face life from the materialistic point of view, and from that definition, I don't have money, then that means I must be miserable, because that's what happiness is according to society. Any little problem that I face becomes gigantic before my eye, because this is the result of bad luck and absolutely nothing else. And someone that I label as being happy, that is someone who has just good luck. So if I'm suffering with all this bad luck, what other solution I can find than just kill myself? So this materialistic point of view makes life very hard to live for those who had a rough beginning. People could have a materialistic point of view in life, but because they were born rich, or because they were born success, or because they were able to achieve success for many different reasons. Yes, the effort was there, but I want to open a parenthesis here. I was watching an interview with Obama and David Letterman. And Obama was saying, I know I worked hard and I did my part, but I cannot refuse the element of luck in everything that happened to me. This element of luck that he's talking about, for us, the Spiritists, we see it as his mission per se that was established before he reincarnated. Things that just work in its place to get us there where we need. So if I have that other perspective in life, yes, there is a purpose in life. I'm not an accident. I'm not just a result of random choices by molecules that resulted in this organic being. There's more into life. I am a spirit that has right now a physical existence, and my objective is to grow. Then any problem that happens to me, I'll have a different perception of that problem. Because everything in life has to do with perceptions. Problems will have the value that you give to them. As a materialistic individual, problems have this gigantic value. As a spiritual person or a spiritist individual, problems have a smaller value. And based on the value that I give to my problem, I'm also determining the probability of a solution here. If I see that a problem is gigantic, the problem becomes unsolvable, almost unbearable. It's a source of my pain. But if I see the problem as being small, then I am able to overcome it. It's not that the problem will disappear. It's just that the problem before my eyes has a smaller value. Therefore, I have more chances to solve the problem. For example, let me speak of financial terms because it's so easier to put into an example. Let's say I owe $5,000. From the materialistic point of view, it's, oh my God, I'm never going to get out of this. This is terrible. What am I going to do? Look at these rich people over there. They're so lucky. I'm not. Why in the world was I born through those poor parents? Why in the world wasn't I accepted to the college I wanted? Why in the world I wasn't hired at that place? Well, the reason I wasn't hired at that place is because I don't know no one over there. This is the reason. There are all these questions that makes the individual feel worse about themselves. Now, with the spiritual perspective of life, and especially a spiritist one, instead of looking at someone who's doing better than me, I would look at my debt of $5,000 and I would try to look at someone who's doing worse than I. And it doesn't matter how big of a problem we have, there are always people who are doing worse than we are. You want a immediate example? The people right now in Panama City in Florida. Some of those individuals have lost their homes, cars, and some of them even people they loved. So do we have problems right now, all of us? Yes, we do. Problems are part of life. But are problems bigger than theirs? I rarely doubt when we put into perspective. So when I look at someone who's doing worse than I, immediately my $5,000 change its value. Not the physical value, but the emotional value I gave to it. So I look at someone and says, oh my God, that guy owes $20,000, and I owe $5,000. I'm going to pay my debt way before he pays his. Why am I making a fuss out of this? It's not that the debt will disappear. That will calm me down. It would avoid despair. What is despair? It's when I lose hope. And if I lose hope, I make the problem worse than actually is. There is a saying in English for this. You make it a hill out of a mole. It's a mountain out of a molehill. You're making a hill out of a the wording was wrong, but it's true everywhere on the planet. There's equivalent saying of that because it's true. It's people's behavior, making things gigantic. And the key is we give the value to the problem. The problems themselves do not have a supreme value, an absolute value. It has a relative value, the value that we give to it.
One final question.
Still about abortion, what's the spiritual vision about abortion in rape case?
Mm-hmm. I know this topic is sensitive. The question is, what happens, what is the view of an abortion when occurred through rape? That's what she asked. The government versus Roe back in 1973 gave women the right to choose what they wanted with their own body. But the argument that we present is the fact that the woman indeed has all the right to do anything she wants with her body. But what she is doing is with somebody else's body that happens to be inside her body. The spirit involved in that case, he is innocent of the fact that the woman was raped. If she, together with the man who raped her, the doctor, the secretary, everyone involved in the abortion process. If they go through this, they're all responsible for it. But the spirit is not involved in the scenario itself. If the woman go ahead through the process, she should think that committing a crime because of a crime that happened to her will not solve, but actually intensify her own problem. The best that she can do, if she wants to abort the baby, is to have the baby and live up for donation. Because as she get older, there are studies on this, that when women go through menopause and they actually fall into depression. The depression is not per se because of chemical reactions in their body. The depression in some women results from the fact that she realizes she no longer can have a baby. And she had an opportunity to have one and didn't. That's where depression comes from. So looking at the current situation of being raped and now she's pregnant, it's horrible. But looking back, when she gets older and looking back when she aborted the baby because she was raped, she could create a tremendous amount of guilt in her for doing this with the innocent child. Because the rapist, he was a criminal, a sick individual, but not the baby inside the mother's womb. From the Spiritist perspective, this is just the spirit who is begging for an opportunity of reincarnation again. So the woman is allowing someone to reincarnate just as her own mother allowed her to reincarnate. So she has all the right in the world to look with disgust at the criminal who raped her. But she should look at least with compassion with the individual that she's carrying through in her belly.
Thank you, Julio. Nano, your final question.
Yeah, it's a short. It's great. It's great. I'm glad I'm here. I have a question. We know the humans started cloning on animals for a long time ago. What if you think is near future that human gonna decide I want to blonde boy with a dark eyes to be long, tall, strong, to be the new LeBron James? You think this time gonna come when human gonna be able to do that with the embryo? Thank you.
Thank you for all the easy questions tonight. So easy. The question is, do you think that in the future we're able to manipulate all of our physiological characteristics? That's what he asked. Well, first of all, through the Spiritist perspective, our physiological aspects, they come from three different sources. One, our mother, the 23 female chromosomes, our father, the other 23 chromosomes, and from our own mold, our own spiritual pan, that we call it the perispirit. The perispirit is the spiritual body that gives the shape of the body. Think for example, a cake that you're making at your house. If you want a round cake, you get a round pan. If you want a square cake, you get a square pan. So the mother and father's chromosome is actually the liquid, the cake that you're pouring in the spiritual pan. The spiritual pan is called the perispirit. Once again, this is on the Spirit's book, second part, and on the fourth chapter that talks about the perispirit. So, our characteristics come from this perispirit. And today's science, today's scientific knowledge of how the gene works tells us there are only certain characteristics that we can change. Remember when I said in our lecture that first they thought that the human genome would have about 100,000 genes, and they were surprised to find out that it's way less. It's just a quarter of it, 24,000. What they found out is that human genes, just like all the animal genes, they interact with one another in very peculiar ways, giving the characteristics that we have. So yes, we might have the power to change eye color, to change height, but to change intelligence, to make a super hearing, or to make a super sight, or to make a child born and speak different languages. No, that would not be possible, because these are characteristics of the spirit. Think of a car and a driver. So if you have a car by itself, the car cannot do much without the driver. When you have the driver inside the car, the driver dictates how fast or slow the car goes. So the spirit is driving this biological machine. If the spirit has limited knowledge, it doesn't matter how much they trick the genes to give this future boy a brilliant brain. There's not much that the spirit can do with that brilliant brain. Just like you sit someone who doesn't know how to play the piano in a $200,000 piano. The piano is great, the instrument is fantastic, but the player can't do much with the piano. He might shine it, but that's it. So they might trick with the genes, tweak with the genes, but not necessarily make someone smart if the spirit is not smart, him or herself.
Thank you, Julio, again.
But we should look at these scientific experiments as advancement of a new era. Because what we learn here in Spiritism is that everything evolves, including the planet Earth. And as we move to a new era, we are at the dawn of a new phase of our human evolution. The diseases that serve as atonements for our past mistakes will no longer exist when we stop making mistakes. In order then to erase the diseases, we have to stop our behavior. No longer we need these diseases. As a result, we will be able, right from the start, avoid these diseases by manipulating our gene. One of the advancements in this area, it's called CRISPR. And it's a genetic technique to remove sections of the genes and replace it with healthy ones to give us health. So one day, through this process, we might free ourselves from cancer and all other genetic diseases. Thank you so much for your attention.
Once more, thank you, Julio, for this moment of hard questions and beautiful answers.